verse 12 says, the army of heaven was restrained from responding to this rebellion, so the daily sacrifice was halted and truth was overthrown. What we need to understand there is that for truth to be overthrown, that daily sacrifice is really tricky, because the sacrifice cannot be an unclean sacrifice. It would be so easy to say the daily sacrifice was overthrown, was stopped. Okay, the daily sacrifice of ourselves was stopped, and the daily sacrifice of Leviathan was stopped, and the truth was overthrown. It would be so easy to translate it that way. But that's not what the sacrifice is. And I'm still struggling with it myself. The sacrifice has to be a clean sacrifice. It has to come from Christ. To say I'm going to slay my pride, and that's a sacrifice to God, is an unclean sacrifice. Okay. In other words, it has to come from Christ. It has to be, for example, Paul saying, all things are legal for me, but everything's not expedient. Everything is legal. I can do anything that I want with impunity, but it's not, everything is not good for me. Everything that I might do is not good for you. What I do might be not going along with God's plan for today, for you, for this ministry at that moment. So the sacrifice that I make is that I'm not going to follow up. I'm not going to follow up on that issue which would benefit me to follow up on it. I'm not going to follow up on it. I'm not going to do the righteous thing. Because even doing the right thing, even though it's legal for me to do it, it just, in the long run, it wouldn't work out well. That's the sacrifice that the Lord wants. So, I don't know how far I'm going to get today, but I want to give you this testimony. With regard to the new premises, there's one thing that's going on in this society today, which I really think is, well, I have issues with society, with the behavior of society today. I have great issues with it. And one of the things that I think is really just wrong is that if someone wants to say no to you, they won't say no to you. They'll say, I'll be at your house at 2 o'clock, and then they don't show up, and you're supposed to figure it out that that was how they said no. Why would they not just say no to you? For whatever reason, it's a very bad habit, I think. Well, this happened to me with regard to, with the air conditioner man, okay, with regard to the premises. And he said once he would call, and he didn't. I called him a second time. He said he would call to set the appointment, and he didn't. And I said, Lord, it would be legitimate for me to call the landlord and say, what is with this guy? And you said he should meet with me, and make a controversy between the landlord and the air conditioner guy. I would have been within my right to do it. And I said, Lord, I'm not going to do it. Because I just had this problem with the first landlord where that lease fell through. And I said, Lord, this landlord seems to be really nice. I don't want any trouble. I don't want to set him against the air conditioner guy. I'm just going to suffer the loss. I'm just not going to call again. I'm not going to tell the landlord. I'm not going to say a word to anybody. That's the sacrifice. See? And what happened? The landlord comes to me and says, did you meet with the air conditioner guy? I never knew of a landlord to behave this in such a positive way towards a tenant. This landlord came after me and said, he can't do that to you. He said, I don't think he should play that game with you. I'm going to call him. I suffered the loss, and the Lord decided to do something. That's the sacrifice. The sacrifice is not me giving up cigarettes, me stopping drinking, me giving up a sin. That is not the sacrifice. That's not the spiritual sacrifice. Can you understand what I'm talking about? Because it's hard. I keep stumbling over it myself. It's really hard. So this verse says, the spiritual sacrifice stopped and truth was overthrown. That means the righteousness of the individual was lost, because you cannot separate truth from righteousness. So if the spiritual sacrifice stopped, if the person stopped being a person that said, I want the best outcome, because you can't compromise your morality. That's not what I'm talking about. I want the best outcome, the best possible outcome, because God is glorified in peace. So I want the best possible outcome that I can have, okay, with the least trouble, and I'm just going to give this up. I'm not going to make any trouble. I'll find another way to get what I need. That's the sacrifice. That's the spiritual sacrifice. Not that you give up your sin. It's expected that you give up your sin. You're supposed to give up your sin. Why is that a sacrifice? You're supposed to give up your sin. The sacrifice is giving up a legitimate satisfaction that you're legitimately entitled to. That's the sacrifice. So when you stop doing that, when you stop sacrificing something that you have a legitimate right to, because in the long run, it's best if you give it up. If you give up your right in that area, at least on that occasion, it's best for everybody concerned. When you stop doing that, you become a carnal person, and truth is overthrown. Because you cannot separate truth from a righteous personality, living a righteous lifestyle, doing righteous behavior. You can't separate that from truth. You can't. Okay? So for truth to be overthrown, that kind of a lifestyle and thinking has to be overthrown, and you become a carnal person, and carnal people are selfish. They only want what's best for themselves. You know, we have someone in this ministry that God required to several years of their life to create a database for us that there was no way we could have afforded to purchase this database. And God actually hindered them from a financially prosperous job for several years to build this database for us. It's that kind of sacrifice. That is a sweet-smelling savor in God's nose, not that you stop smoking. God help us, all brethren. God help us. God help us to understand. Thank you, Lord, for teaching us. Thank you, Lord, that we would never understand if you didn't teach us.